Hi, good afternoon. First of all, thank you for coming out this afternoon, actually. This is actually my first time in Houston, Texas, so I'm really happy. Thank you. Thank you. So I just wanted to start off by just telling you a little more about Here Comes the Sun, given that I'm going to assume that you haven't read it as yet. So my book follows the lives of three women living on the outskirts of Montego Bay in a fictional city called Riverbank. And what's happening is that a huge hotel resort is about to take over their fishing village, and really how they survive that. So it touches upon displacement, identity, race, class, and sexuality on the island. My reasoning for writing a book like Here Comes the Sun was really to give readers a glimpse of the other side of paradise. Given that, when you hear about Jamaica, a lot of people assume, what you see in the Sandals commercial, for example, come to Jamaica, Irie, all these like beautiful visions of the land and the sea and the beach. And yes, Jamaica is very beautiful, but there's another side to Jamaica that people don't really see. Right, so I wanted to document those individuals who are behind that fantasy, and these are the working class Jamaicans, and particularly women, working class Jamaican women who are often invisible. And so from my book, Here Comes the Sun, follows the lives of three women, Dolores, who's the mother figure, and her two daughters, Thandi, who's the youngest daughter, and Margot, the oldest daughter. Now Margot works in a hotel resort as a hotel clerk. And by night, she prostitutes herself to wealthy tourists on the island, only to supplement her income. That's another myth in terms of the hotel industry hiring a lot of people to work in the hotels but not pay them enough. So Margot supplements her income only because she wants Thandi, the youngest sister, to become a medical doctor. That's her dream, and feeling that Thandi would be the one to pull the family out of poverty. But the scene I'm about to read to you, which is a Thandi scene, really shows you what Thandi really aspires to, given that our class system there is so strong in terms of class and color. So Thandi's passion is, well, not passion, Thandi aspires to bleach her skin to become lighter, to look as much as like the ruling class, hoping for a more acceptance and access on an island where the class structure is really a barrier. So here's Thandi, the youngest daughter. I used to be black like you, but look at me. Miss Ruby turns her head from side to side for Thandi to see her salmon-colored skin, delicate with the texture of scalded milk. See how bright my skin come? If you follow instructions, yours will get this way quicker. Know that you have the Queen of Pearl? You might be lucky. If you want faster results, use it twice a day. She rubs the concoction up and down Thandi's neck, back, arms, and shoulders. She rubs everywhere but her butt crack. Miss Ruby is hardly tender. Thandi wonders if Miss Ruby's roughness is punishment for not having followed her earlier instructions. She imagines her blackness peeling off. The hydrogen peroxide Miss Ruby pours into the mixture, acting like an abrasive, a medicine for her melancholy. She closes her eyes as the warm formula touches her skin. Miss Ruby works her way to Thandi's chest. The circular motion of a stranger's hands on her breast makes Thandi blush. She has never been touched this way. She opens her eyes and searches for something, anything that can take her mind off the sensation of this woman's fingers. She imagines herself as a fish Miss Ruby rubs down with salt and vinegar before frying. Her eyes find the ceiling. Had she been able to lift her arms, she would trace the things she sees projected from her mind. Luckily, you have good hair already, Miss Ruby says. Good coolie hair. Your daddy's an Indian? I don't know, Thandi says, still staring up at the planks in the ceiling. Never met him. Well, God played a cruel joke on you. Because, child, if your skin was as pretty as your hair, you'd be one gorgeous woman. Miss Ruby isn't saying anything Thandi hasn't heard before. Her mother says the same thing, often shaking her head the way she does over burnt food that has gone to waste. It's a pity you never have skin like your daddy. Thandi's neither the nutmeg brown that makes her older sister Margot an honorable mistress, a rung lower than a bright-skinned wife. Nor is she black like her mother Dolores, whose skin makes people sympathetic when they see her, who want to be black like that in this place. Miss Ruby once said to Thandi about her mother. Miss Ruby gives Thandi the homemade mixture in the jar for her to apply as needed. Only as needed, she stresses. These are very strong chemicals that could kill you. She then reaches for the saran wrap and begins to wrap Thandi's arms and torso. A mummified Thandi sits and listens to Miss Ruby's instructions. If you want to come quicker, leave on the plastic. Don't wash, don't go in the sun. If you have to go in the sun for whatever reason, make sure you cover up at all times from head to toe. If you feel like you're going to faint, just drink water. It makes you sweat more. But whatever you do, don't take off the plastic. And remember, stay out of that sun. Miss Ruby repeats these words like an ominous warning, her eyes pouring into Thandi's. Thandi listens and nods, though she wants to rip the saran wrap off and jump into the river. She imagines her skin boiling, becoming molten liquid underneath the plastic wrap. Do I have to wear this all the time? Thandi asks. Heat and sweat is the advantage. Just bear it, Miss Ruby says, stamping her with a look. Thandi regrets saying anything, sensing her complaint might be interpreted as her wanting less out of life, less opportunity, less chance of attracting the type of boys her mother and sister want her to attract, the type who will be at the party for sure. Less chance of acceptance in school, less chance to flunk school, the only ship on which black girls like her could float, given that their looks will never do it for them. Her mother tells her this too. The only thing you have going for you is your education. No ruin it. Meanwhile, the unintelligent brownings in school end up with modeling contracts or with boyfriends with money they can spend on them. The less attractive ones get good jobs in their family businesses. What else does Thandi have to fall back on if she fails the exam besides her drawings? But no one wants those. No one respects an artist. So when Thandi puts her clothes on, she pretends to ignore the crinkling of the plastic under her uniform and the nausea that comes over her. Miss Ruby examines her skin, her eyes like a razor raking over Thandi's body, as though looking for areas she might have missed, dark patches that need to be rubbed, scrubbed down with the rigor of someone scouring the bottom of a burnt pot. Or the way she used to scale fish, her dark eyes having them a subtle hostility that reminds Thandi of the way the girls and nuns at school look at her. Can she tell Thandi doesn't belong? Can she sniff her deceit? Perhaps in that moment, Thandi reminds her of someone who did her wrong, or herself, the way she looked before she bleached her skin. How suddenly her mood changes once Thandi pays her the money. Remember to stay out of that sun like I tell you, Miss Ruby says, because you and I both know God not like ugly. Thank you. So that's Thandi's scene. So clearly we see what's going on with Thandi. And now I'm just going to introduce you to Margot, that sister I spoke about earlier in the introduction, who works as a hotel clerk, of course, but have other extracurricular activities at night. So without further ado, Margot. Margot rolls over, her legs straddling Horace. She pinches his pink flesh between her fingers and watches it turn white. Horace groans and smiles up at her through drooping eyelids. Had she been attracted to him, she would have kissed the place on his cheeks where his long lashes touch and placed her lips on top of his puckered ones. She would have even had the patience to lie beside him beforehand and run her fingers over the hairs on his enormous belly. Instead, she mounts him and moves her hips steadily, rhythmically. Her hands grip her thighs. His hands grip her thighs before moving to her breasts. In sex, Margot finds a deep calm, a refuge in which she hides. She imagines herself as a vacuum, inhaling everything, every word, every thought, every glance, every tear. They'd all disappear out of sight, only to be emptied behind the hotel by maids throwing out the balls of dust into big bins while humming their familiar sad song that Margot used to hear her grandmother hum. As a little girl, she knew the sorrows in those songs, but felt immune to the pain in them. She knew already that helplessness is weak and that there is no use in having faith in God. God is not the one to put food on the table or send her sister Thandi to school. And God is certainly not the one keeping the roof over their heads. She sways high above Horace like a palm tree in a cool breeze as he whispers his gratitude, sometimes cursing her with expletives that cause her to throw her head back and pick up speed. His head is small and inconspicuous from where she sits. There are moments when another person comes to mind, feminine lips parting, hungry for more than Margot's body. The person's eyes are steady on hers. Margot knows those eyes. They plead with her, so she concentrates instead on the unremarkable man's head below her. She rocks and sways, aware of the creeping chaos, the sensation that spreads from her groin all the way to his curled toes, as though her orgasm has possessed his body too. When it's all over, Margot spirals down and down, crashing like a big tree, uprooted by nature's merciless axe. She lies next to Horace, post-coital disgust and a lurking disappointment coiling in her belly like days-old milk. She's human again. And finally, Dolores, who is Thandi and Margot's mother. Now, I opened the scene with Thandi bleaching, but of course, there were conversations before that. So Dolores is my character who really, she's like the voice of our post-colonial scars on the island, which, still to this day is strong, 2017, in terms of the colorism. So here in this monologue, you'll really hear where Dolores is coming from. So here's Dolores. And by the way, she's trying to convince Thandi of something. And I always say, I won't tell you what she's trying to convince her of. Of course, you have to buy the book and read it to see. But here's her monologue. Dolores comes close to Thandi, her arms open, as if to embrace her. Thandi is prepared to rest her head against her mother's big breast. She's ready to drop her shoulders and let her mother rub them. Tell her that it will be all right, that Clover got what he deserved. The embrace is a sweet one Thandi had forgotten until now. Her mother's love is as vicious and domineering as her personality. Once it's felt, there's none other like it. Thandi relaxes in Dolores' embrace, allowing herself to be rocked back and forth like a baby. But then it's cut short. Slowly, Dolores pries Thandi off her and holds her at arm's length. I want you to come to your senses and turn that boy in. Everything happened for a reason, and that was it, Dolores says. Do it for all of it, Thandi. He was defending me. The devil is a liar. Him kick you down, but it don't mean he can't get back up and use the tool him give you. What Clover did is history, something long gone. So put it behind you and do the right thing. Him is a brute, mama. Shh. You go and pay for cursing the dead. Dolores pulls Thandi closer and rocks her in her bosom. She smells like the green bananas she sliced up. She runs her fingers through Thandi's hair as she speaks. You and that boy Charles shouldn't mix in the first place. As I say, if you go pick up with a street boy, then you must at least get something out of it. Sorry. Forget about what Clover did. That won't set you free. It's enough women it happened to, and it didn't kill them. What will set you free is money. Don't say me never teach you that. I send you to school for good reasons, yes? But it's also for you to learn common sense. You think because Charles say him love you, that you're worth something? You think because him say him want you, that he mean it? That he's not wanting him after, and when him get it, him run? What is this love, eh? You don't know nothing about no love. Love is foolish. You ever see love put running water in a pipe? You ever see love build a roof over our head? You ever see love give a free education, especially to those children whose parents can't afford it? You ever see love fill up a cupboard or hand with visa so we can get anywhere far from this rat hole? What can love do for you? How you go and love a stranger when you don't even know what love is? And will just take advantage of you and walk away. You have to get your return in dollars, not cents. And besides, who gonna want a naive girl like you? But suppose him did really want you. Could you really love somebody who is an absolute fool when it comes down to these things? Somebody who green? You wouldn't want that, and neither would he. You're giving him everything for free. Boys like stupid girls like that. They take one look at your black face and know you're desperate enough to spread your legs at the first compliment. They see your true color before you tell them your name. They know they can tell you anything and your black self believe it and accept it. How we so used to getting the leftovers. Who you know really love a black girl for more than what's between our legs? You're a pretty black girl. But it's my duty as your mother to teach you these things. Put something in your head, child. You know how much money we could have get? 10,000 US dollars. That can take you from here to eternity. Pay for your education and everything. Use your head, child. You can't place more value on this boy and his foolish love over money. If it means so little to you, then you'll lose everything. Remember this, nobody loves a black girl, not even ourselves. Now get up and get your pay. All right, so that's Dolores. Now of course, I'm going to start off in terms of other reasons why I wrote this book. So, like I said before, I wanted to depict the other side of paradise, right? Who are these working class people? Who are these working class Jamaican women? They're often invisible, first of all, in literature and film, and usually when you see them, they're caricatures. As a working class Jamaican woman myself, it was really important for me to put that on the page. You know, it was Toni Morrison who said, if you don't see yourself, then write it. If you don't see your story, write it. And so for me as a writer, it was really, I had to write a Dolores, I had to write a Thandi, I had to write a Margot, and I had to write a Verdine. Verdine more, I didn't read her scenes. I'll leave it up to the reader. But Margot in the book is attracted to a woman, Verdine Moore. Now, growing up in Jamaica, of course, knowing that it's a highly homophobic place, but what's really going on that I wanted to tap into even more than that is the sexualization of our girls and of our women. So what I did with writing a book like Here Comes the Sun was use the, what's going on with the tourism industry that's really exploiting the island and parallel that to the exploitation of women's bodies. So of course you'd find that yes, Margot is selling herself, selling her sexuality, which is the only thing she knew, right? And then of course later on commodifying the bodies of young girls, all out of desperation, right? This is the only thing she was given. This is the only thing she knows. And you know, in the intro earlier, you know, in terms of why I came to America, it was like for opportunities, because what happens is that upward mobility is really hard on the island. You know, if I had the chance, I would have definitely wanted to stay. You know, it's a beautiful country, but the opportunities are limited. And so if you don't have the resource or the right last name, you really can't get anywhere, right? It's like a concrete ceiling. So my character, I use my character Margot to depict that. What is that like? Not having that opportunity, being brilliant, yes, but not given any avenues to show that. So the one thing she knows is her sexuality, and she uses that. But in the midst of using that, of course, her heart really belongs to a woman. And that's something else too, in terms of her being unable to love that woman fully on an island where that love is shunned. So really tapping into the complexities of these women, these characters who we hardly see anywhere else. And in addition to that, you know, working hard for her sister Thandi to be that person to give them a new life. But as you saw in the opening scene, Thandi feeling that if she's not light enough, she will not be accepted. She won't get anywhere in the island. And I wanted to use that character, like all the other characters, to document what does that feel like, right? For that young girl, 15-year-old, as a teenager, you already have so many other insecurities. So on top of that, you know, feeling that she's not light enough to be loved, to be accepted. And so even though her family sees her as brilliant as this doctor-to-be, she doesn't see herself as worthy unless if she gets to a certain hue, a certain color. And, you know, on the island right now, there's a lot of discussion about who are these girls and boys, because boys are also bleaching their skin. Who are these kids and why they're doing it? But our government don't seem to actually tap into why, the reasons, the underlying reasons. First of all, these kids are showing our society that the society is a creation. They were the ones who created this, right? This monster. Given that, you know, when you look at who's in charge on that small island in Jamaica, it's really, you know, 80% of our country, our population are darker skinned Jamaicans. But, you know, we have no sense of ownership, right? And when you look at who owns the hotels, right? Who owns the big businesses? You know, you don't see the Jamaicans, like the people, the African people. So in response to this, a lot of working class Black Jamaican boys and girls are resorting to lightening their skin to hopefully tap into that pie, right? What they feel they can actually access one day, right? And so they're criticized for vanity, but it's really deeper than that. When you really look at our post-colonial scars and what we're left with, you know, and like I said before, in current day is 2017, and this is going on more than ever. So I wanted to document that in my work without being didactic for sure. You know, I'm a realistic writer, so when I write my characters, I want them to reflect society, what's really going on, but hopefully to humanize them so that when individuals walk away from the book, you know, they'll feel that, wow, you know, they really got to know individuals who they wouldn't have otherwise understood. You know, in a different setting. So I wanted to bring these women and their language to the forefront. If you notice Dolores' monologue, I was reading in Jamaican dialect, in our patois. And that was important for me to write in this book because, first of all, if I'm writing Jamaican working class women, I have to write their language. Two Jamaican women, working class Jamaican women, would not be speaking to each other unobserved in standard English. They'll be speaking the dialect. And so I wanted to preserve that authenticity. I wanted to be true to the characters by using that language. And given that, you know, on the island itself, Jamaican patois is looked down upon. You know, if you speak it, you're uncultured or uneducated. So I was actually also writing against that, you know, against the concept of silencing a whole group of people by telling us we can't speak our language. So that's one of the things, you know, right now now that I have this platform as an artist to hopefully preserve, because the schools will tell these kids only speak standard English. So a lot of us grew up being so ashamed of Jamaican patois. But as James Baldwin said, you know, language is identity. And so, you know, to silence a whole group of people, that's really eliminating their identity. Right, so hopefully my goal is, especially in this book and in my next ones, is to actually preserve our identity, right? Who are we? How do we sound? And a reader who's not familiar with Jamaican tongue, Jamaican language, it forces them to slow down, because in slowing down, you actually see these people, right, who are already invisible. You know, it forces you to slow down, to see them, to hear them, right? And so that was one of my main goals for writing patois in the dialogue. I hope I'm touching on everything that I wanted to touch on. And what else? I wanted to also to say that when writing about displacement, I know this could be taking place. It's taking place in Jamaica in my book, but it could be anywhere, right? Displacement happens all over in the United States. You know, my wife and I go to DC a lot, for example. And, you know, locals will tell us, oh, you know, DC, you know, all these condominiums that are being built, right, pushing people out. It could be in the Philippines. It could be in Europe. You know, it could be anywhere, right? But, you know, what is it like to feel displaced? And also, what is it like to question your identity, right? So, you know, we all want acceptance. We all need acceptance. And so, yes, with Thandi's character, with her going through the extensive lengths of lightening her skin, that could be somebody saying, I'm going to dye my hair a certain color to be accepted, or I should lose weight, or I should wear contact lens, or I should do something to be accepted into a particular group. So, you know, anybody could actually identify with these characters. And so I'm going to end here. When I went back home to read Here Comes the Sun, it was actually a room full of Jamaican elites, right? Upper class Jamaicans. And, you know, in the book here, they refer to the ruling class. And when I read the bleaching scene to them at Calabash Literary Festival in June, many people came up to me afterwards saying how much they identified with Thandi's character. Now I'm looking at these people like, really? You know, wow. And so, you know, one of the things that they said is that if you are a human being feeling that you have not been accepted into a group that you want desperately to be accepted by, it's easy to identify with a character like that, right? And for the same reason, I created Verdine Moore, who, you know, she is a returnee. She returned home to Jamaica from Britain. And, you know, she's claiming a country that does not claim her back. You know, what does that feel like in terms of, you know, loving her country so much, right? And coming home and being outed as that lesbian, right? That lesbian who, you know, she would wake up in the mornings and see like dog blood on her walkway, right? Telling her to baptize or repent. But, you know, one of the hurtful parts about leaving a country like Jamaica and returning is that, yes, you know, being acknowledged now as the author that I am, but, you know, one of the biggest, but still nobody's really tapping into why I left, right? In addition to the homophobia, that classism I mentioned, and that how hard it is to be upwardly mobile there, you know, so they'll embrace writers like myself, Marlon James, but, you know, do nothing to really keep us there, right? So I wanted to start a dialogue, really. And, you know, as a writer, I'm happy that I'm able to start a dialogue, because that's the first movement to making change.
So how did you come up with the title, Here Comes the Sun?
Oh, good question. So I came up with the title midway through the book, actually. It wasn't inspired by the Beatles song at all. But I wanted to use it. The sun is really an irony, right? I wanted to, you know, as darker-skinned Jamaicans, we're told to fear the sun because it would make you darker, right? And like I explained before, dark skin, there, you know, the access, you know, there's that fear that you won't get the access, the acceptance that you want. And so in a book like Here Comes the sun is really the reveal, the illuminating factor, the desperation inherent in poverty, right? So showing that other side of paradise. So here comes the sun, you know, reveals a lot that's often hidden. So in this case, it's like one of the title is really an irony. But thank you.
You touched on so many topics in this particular book. You talked about future books. Where are you going to go from here?
So from here, oh my goodness. So I feel like I have so much, you know, I'm not done with Jamaica yet. In fact, my next book is set in Brooklyn, New York, and Jamaica. But I still want to tackle the same themes that I've tackled in Here Comes the Sun and more. So that's really what's going on with my current career path. Thank you.
Have you always wanted to be a writer, or did this develop as you got older?
Yeah, I've always loved writing. In fact, my mother, you know, when I went home, my mother showed me, like she actually saved all these journals. So apparently I was journaling a lot, and she saved all those books. So when I went home and I saw, wow, I was writing stories. So I think, I guess I always had it, but I never really latched on to writing until in undergrad at Cornell. I was really homesick, and I felt like, you know, there was nothing, I wanted to hold on to something. So what I started doing was writing more. I wrote poetry, short stories. And that's when my love for writing really developed. One professor had said to me that, oh, this should be my major. I should be an English major with creative writing minor. And when he said that, I thought, my gosh, like, how could, like, really, that this could not happen? Like, I was a first-generation immigrant, first-generation college student. So for me, like Thandi, the wait was to be that doctor, right? That doctor that the family could brag about, that doctor that could actually, you know, be somebody in society, go back to Jamaica, make a change, you know, or stay here and be among the who's who. And when, you know, that for me, because I was so terrified, I did not take that advice. I went on to graduate, got my master's in public health at University of Michigan with the same intention of getting a doctorate degree. And then coming back to New York at Columbia doing research. So it wasn't until meeting my wife, who actually noticed that I was writing. You know, I'd come home at nights, like my job ended like 6 p.m. By 7 p.m., I was home writing. And she said to me one day, you know, are you a writer or a researcher? And again, that fear crept in. I was like, I am a researcher. But she said, but no, you write all the time. In fact, you write more than anyone I've known. And so it actually forced me to reflect And I even remember that first professor who told me that this is something I should look into. And so I took that first step. I applied to to get a master's in fine arts at Sierra Lawrence, got in, and somehow I enjoyed that program so much. I was in a room of other writers, and finally feeling that, wow, this is something I could actually do, right? And I never looked back since. Of course, what came with that was also still that fear, because I was still hanging out with my pre-med classmates from Cornell. And they'll say things to me like, oh, so is this really, are you serious? You know, are you sure you don't want to apply to medical school like next year? You know, because they couldn't wrap their minds around writing, you know, and, you know, again, even my friends back home in Jamaica saying, well, you know, you chose writing over being a doctor, like who does that? Given that, you know, the art is not really respected as a career. And so it took me a while to really, quote unquote, come out as a writer. And one of the things that my father made clear to me was that, you know, he didn't really accept that what I did until Here Comes the Sun came out, where I have a product to say, oh, okay, so my daughter is a writer. If you want to find out what she writes, like go buy her book, right? Kind of thing. So, you know, being able to say something like that. Not that writers who don't have a book out are not real writers. We're definitely all writers. But for people who don't understand, you know, what writing is or what being an author is, or, you know, the struggle behind a book or behind the process, I guess for them, especially for my family members, it was important for me to show them, you know. So I had a lot of waiting before really coming out as like, okay, Nicole the author, as opposed to Nicole the doctor to be. But yeah, but thanks for that.
Do you support such a practice of bleaching skin color? And if you don't, how will you encourage darker skinned teenagers to put less emphasis on their physical appearance and focus more on their talents?
Yeah, so clearly I do not accept skin bleaching, which is why I wrote a book like this one. Because you know, growing up working class Jamaican myself, like Thandi, I went to an elite private school in Jamaica, a prominent school in Jamaica, St. Andrew High School for girls. And I was actually, this was in the 90s. And, you know, these were the daughters of doctors, lawyers, you know, really elite society. And that was where I first was aware of the classism in the country, right? How these girls separated themselves, for example, from the working class girls who were there. And like Thandi, feeling myself, oh, like, man, I do not fit in. Why? You know, so first of all, convincing my mother that my hair needs to be straightened. And she straightened my hair. Then it was my skin. I need to lighten my skin. So I got Naniola, which, I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right. It's one of the creams. And I remember the first time I rubbed it on, it dried my skin out. And then saying to myself, but this is ridiculous. Why am I doing this, right? Like, this is, I can't continue doing this. But of course, unfortunately for my character, Thandi, she continues doing it. And like a lot of other teenagers in Jamaica continue doing it, hoping to be accepted. You know, like I said, it's not vanity, really. It's more than that. It's society. It's what society. It's what we have internalized as Black children, Black boys and girls, growing up in that society. So yes, you could tell a Jamaican girl or boy to, oh, you know, focus on your education, focus on your talents. But if they don't have any such opportunities, then we can't tell them anything. You know, unlike America, education in Jamaica is not free. And so these impoverished or working class Jamaican boys and girls, there's nothing for them to really, nobody's investing in their future. Nobody's investing in developing their talents. Because yes, I've walked among a lot of great artists there, but there's nothing for that there. You know, like I said, there's still that mentality that doctor, lawyer, engineer, business owner, the traditional careers are what our people aspire to be. So, you know, it's unfortunate. So what happens is that, you know, you do have the bleaching happening, like you do have the crimes, and like you do have other ways in which people resort to trying their best to survive. So that's all I can give for now. Yeah.
So the bleaching that they do, is it like what you described in the
Yes.
plastic.
Yeah, that's extreme actually. What Thandi is really doing, you know, like a lot of people are doing now, they're finding out that if they wrap themselves with saran wrap and then, of course, wear heavy hooded shirts or pants to hide from the sun, because Jamaica is hot. It's a hot country. The sun is always shining, which is great. Like when I go home now, I just lay in the sun. But you know, these people who are bleaching their skin have to hide from the sun, because what the sun does, it reverses what the cream has done in terms of lightening their skin. So if you do go to Jamaica right now, as we speak, you might see people walking around with broad hats and like heavy hooded sweatshirts, and you would be wondering to yourself, why do they look like that? And it's so hot outside. But what they're doing, they're actually bleaching their skin, and they take it off at night. So that, let's say a party is coming up, they'll take it off, and at that party, you'll be looking like, oh, is that the same person? Because their skin would be significantly lighter. Now, what's happening is that they're ignoring the health consequences, right? In their desperation to look that way in order to fit in, they're ignoring the health consequences. And that's something that's, you know, people are beginning to start to research. Of course, there's skin cancer. There's a lot of reproductive health outcomes, negative outcomes, all these different things. But they're not reading the backs of these creams, and that could be problematic in the future. Oop. Any other questions?
Are there many women like Margot who have jobs and have to supplement
Their income.
by doing prostitution?
Well, Margot is definitely, for me, a fictional character in that aspect. You know, that's what Margot chooses to do, to supplement. I'm not sure what other women do. I know for my mother, for example, luckily my father lived in the United States. He was living in New York by then, so he could send money, he could wire money home. So if they don't have a partner here, perhaps, I don't know what they do. You know, that's a good question. But for Margot, prostituting herself was what she knew how to do, given that she was sold into prostitution at the age of 14. And so she just continued doing that, knowing that she'll probably make more money there than the hotel desk clerk that she has going on. Any other questions?
No other questions?
Don't be shy.
Okay, well, I'd like to thank Nicole for being here.
Thank you.
It was a wonderful presentation.
Thank you.
Thank y'all for coming. And once again, if you'd like to purchase her book, it's available in the bookstore on the patio, and she will be outside to sign your book as well. Or if you have other questions that you'd like to ask her one-on-one.
Thank you.